So, part two. I'm doing a part two of how to stop overthinking and anxiety when you're AuDHD. Different spot, put my glasses back on, it's just rained. My hair is all kind of like, blah. I'm a bit wet, but anyway. I think the irony of posting the video about the how to stop overthinking and anxiety is I'm like, oh, you know, I had to move past my own anxiety and overthinking of wondering if people are going to be like, who are you to say this? And it's easy for you to say, and da 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 da. And it's like, it's a perfect example of how thoughts that have usually come from somewhere else can grow arms and legs. So being able to take that pause, observe the thoughts, check in the validity of them, and just not hook onto them is so powerful. It'd be so easy to just kind of let things like that just like completely derail you. Now, I want to go into a couple more tips, but it was kind of like, I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to kind of explain where this really rooted for me. Because in the last video, I talked about, you know, like observing the thoughts and how breath work is how you root that in and kind of make that possible, is because years and years ago, it would have been about 2015, so 10 years ago, holy shit, 10 years ago, I used to get anxiety attacks that were so bad. I guess they were more panic attacks. They were so bad that I used to feel like I couldn't breathe. And when I went to the doctor and they did tests for like asthma and stuff, and they precautionarily treated me for asthma because my peak flow rate was so low. And it was strange because at the time I was teaching up to 8 spin classes a week, and I was able to do that. Like, I could breathe, but when these anxiety attacks took hold, like it was presenting like asthma. It was wild. So it was one of those things that really almost triggered me to learn how to breathe, although it took a little bit longer, because at the time I didn't know anything about trauma. I obviously didn't know that I was autistic. It was before my mum died, and I knew subconsciously that it wasn't going to be long, and there was that element of panic there. But I also didn't know that I was intolerant to lactose, so that the multiple lattes that I was having, creating that postnasal drip, which makes you feel like your throat's always like really sticking, were all kind of contributing to it. So for me, learning to breathe was one of those things that really helped me to feel safe. And when you're feeling anxious and when you're overthinking, generally speaking, you're not feeling safe. So it's finding different ways to be able to ground yourself. And if you can do that with somebody else, if you can co-regulate, that's amazing, that's beautiful if you're able to do that. The reason why I teach the things that I do is because for a lot of my life and for a long time, I haven't had access to that. I haven't had access to co-regulation. So being able to ground myself was really important. And again, feeding back into that story I told you about before. So, a few months after that, my mum went into intensive care, and she, she died. And I remember at the time, this was at the time when I would phone her up when I was having those feelings when I couldn't breathe, and just being able to talk to her would sort of calm me down, make me feel safe, make me feel that sense of home. So of course, when she went into intensive care, all of a sudden I didn't have that anymore. She wasn't there for me to co-regulate with, and I was like, okay, so I just need to take these skills and those, internalized messages that I got from those calls and realize that I can hold myself, which again, for a long time, and I think a lot of autistic people and ADHD people will resonate with that, like being able to co-regulate with others, people who maybe don't necessarily understand you, and in some cases don't want to understand you. That can make you feel even more overwhelmed. create even more overthinking, more upset. So being able to really take time and practice to develop the ability to ground yourself and speak really kind to yourself. I can't overstate how valuable that is, and I can't at the same time overstate how it takes time. You know, it's easy for people to say, oh, love yourself, you know, love yourself, you need to love yourself. You know, there was points where that was so wildly inaccessible to me, to the point that I used to get more frustrated and more upset because it felt like something else that I was failing at. And that's why, so the thought observing tip that I said in the first video is something that I learned through acceptance and commitment therapy. So it's, again, where you're not trying to change the things you're experiencing, but observe them, and notice all the different senses that are, you know, attached to whatever sensation or whatever thoughts that you have. So it's easier then to sort of recognize what certain emotions are, what thoughts trigger what, and things like that. And, you know, some people will, you know, say, you know, then you're over intellectualizing. But for me, that was what made it accessible. Before I could detach thoughts from feelings and be like, oh, this is this, or, you know, and I think it's a really personal journey, and there's so many ways that you can approach it. But this is me teaching from the perspective of, you know, having lost both of my parents. Sorry, spiders just like crawling over me there. Yeah, having lost both of my parents, and of course, you know, a few years ago when I was on this app, you know, we'd been flooded out of our house and didn't know what to do, and, you know, had 3 moves. Like, that's so much for anyone to go through, let alone if you're autistic, you're ADHD, and you don't necessarily have, you know, those home connections. You know, these skills have been so important for me. The intention with this video was actually to tell a couple more, but I think those 2 are so foundational. There's other things, of course, like my morning walks are, you know, I need them. Establishing a routine, but establishing a routine that is movable. So I like to think of my routines as floating structures, so I can take them, especially from when we had to move different places, or the fact that we like to travel as well, is being able to have a routine that can move with you and is easily replicable for different environments, is really important. If I'm having overthinking or anxiety, I'm usually trying to notice whether I need to change the environment or the activity that I'm doing. And I think it's really tempting when you overthink and when you're anxious to shrink your world and constrict, but as what your body is doing. So like I was saying about the breathing, when you're anxious, you tend to come in and up, making yourself smaller and smaller and smaller. So one of the things to, like, long-term work through anxiety and overthinking is to find ways to be able to expand and take up space, to do the things that authentically light you up, fill you up, make you feel good, versus shrinking your world. For a long time I felt like, oh, I need to rest more, I need to rest more, I need to rest more. And what I really needed was I needed to be doing more of the things that brought me so much joy that I felt rested as a result. So yeah, those are some of the things. EFT is another one of my massive favorites, but I'll have to do a video of that all unto itself. But I do have breathwork videos and EFT videos on my YouTube channel, so you can go over there and there's some great videos over there on that. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments.